Good evening. I hereby call to order the April 27th, 2022 meeting of the Gaithersburg Historic District Commission. For our roll call, please answer present when I call your name. Community Planning Manager Greg Mann.
Present.
Thank you. Assistant City Attorney Eric Perla.
Present.
Planner 2 Chris Berger.
Present.
Commissioner and Vice Chairman John Roddy.
Present.
Commissioner Mary Jo LaFrance.
Present.
Commissioner Rudy Morgan.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Kathleen Ramirez.
Present.
And myself, Commissioner and Chairman Dean Mantola, says present. We have a quorum. And first I would like to introduce our newest member, Kathleen Ramirez. Kathleen has quite an impressive resume, really does. She's an attorney who, among other things, is currently in general litigation practice, representing private clients as well as several federal agencies, and was previously employed with several federal agencies such as the U.S. Department of Justice. So welcome to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be
Glad
here.
to have you.
Welcome.
And Commissioner Ramirez's role tonight will be as a full commissioner. Congratulations on your first attempt. Okay, next is our preliminary statement, which is as follows. This commission is empowered to meet and act under Article 12 of the City Code of Gaithersburg. The technical qualifications of the staff of this commission and the members of the commission are on file with the City of Gaithersburg, are available on request to any applicant, and are hereby made a part of the legal record of each and every application heard today. Each application heard today is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing precedent for any other application. Okay, does anybody have any conflicts of interest for any application being heard tonight? If so, please raise your hand or verbally let me know.
Well, not a conflict of interest, but a disclosure.
Okay, please
I
go ahead.
disclosed that I live on 105 Chestnut Street in the Chestnut Meem Historic District, and that's the same historic district as HIST 9253 2022.
Okay, thank you so much. And Kathleen?
I do have a conflict. HIST 9181-2022 is my personal historic tax credit certification application.
Okay, thank you. So you'll recuse yourself from
I
that?
sure will.
Okay, very good. All right. Next then, we have two sets of minutes, starting with the first of the two, which is from our January 26, 2022 meeting, needing approval. Does any commissioner have any corrections or additions to the minutes that they would like to see? And again, Kathleen, since you weren't here, you can not recuse yourself, you can vote absent on that. So anybody? No? Okay, so then I'm looking for I'll say.
So move.
Adopt the minutes, so moved. Anybody second?
Second.
Okay, so we'll roll call for adopting. Commissioner Roddy.
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Abstain.
Thank you. And myself, Commissioner Mantola says aye. So that would be 4-0 to 1. Motion passes. Next, we have the second set of minutes, which is from our March 23rd, 22 meeting. Does any commissioner have any corrections or additions to the minutes that they would like to see?
No.
Okay. Next, then, can somebody make a motion?
I so move.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. So, if you're in favor of it, say aye, please. Commissioner Roddy.
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Abstain.
Okay, and Commissioner Mantola says aye, so it's 4-0 to 1, that passes. Next then is we have two historic area work permits, also known as HOPs. So I'd like to read just a statement. Any member from the public who wishes to speak on one of tonight's historic work permit applications will be given 3 minutes to address the HDC from the podium at the reserved time. But we ask that you refrain from speaking out from the audience and that you take your private conversations outside the council chambers. Okay, so the first HOP is HIST 9253-2022, which is the installation of a chicken coop and a playhouse in the backyard of 104 Chestnut Street in the R90 medium density residential zone. May we have an introduction from staff?
Yes, the Martha Meem house is located at 104 Chestnut Street and is contributing to the Chestnut Meem Historic District. It's zoned R90 medium density residential. The applicant seeks approval to install a chicken coop and a playhouse in the backyard in the locations shown on the aerial on the screen. The application comes before the HDC in accordance with Section 24-227A of the City Code. First, for the chicken coop, it will measure 98 square feet and stand 8 feet tall. The concrete foundation will support the wood frame walls. The screened-in enclosure will have a screen door. The structure will include a house for the chickens made out of wood. The shed roof will be covered with corrugated metal, and the applicant said that they will construct it themselves. Here's a rendering of the coop. As required by code, it will be placed at least 25 feet from the side property line with 106 Chestnut Street, here in this location next to the garage. It will also be at least 75 feet from the nearest homes, which is in conformance with city code requirements for chicken coops. And here's the view from Chestnut Street. So that's the garage building we just saw. It will be beyond the tree, so it will be minimally visible from Chestnut Street. Here's the view from Meem Avenue, and here, again, here's the garage. So the outbuildings you see here, they're in the foreground. Those are the adjacent property at 102 Chestnut Street. And next, for the Playhouse, it will measure 112 square feet and stand approximately 8 feet tall. It will be located at the closest point 3 feet away from the side property line with 102 Chestnut Street. It will be placed on masonry footings. The wood frame walls will be covered with vinyl siding. The gable roof will have gray asphalt shingles, and it will have blue trim and shutters to match the Meem house. And we have a few more representative photos of what it will look like. And again, here's a photo from Chestnut Street. So it will be located in this side yard here beyond the evergreen tree. And from Meem Avenue, it will be located approximately in this area beyond the bush and beyond the fence here. So I believe we have a project representative joining us tonight. If you can please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and add anything else you would like.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Adrienne. I'm one of the owners. Thank you.
Welcome to you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, would you like to?
Swear in.
Yes, please.
Of course.
Yeah.
Going to swear you in really quickly. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony that you will give in this matter tonight will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Very good. So please add anything you'd like to let us know.
Okay. Yeah, we're planning on, we'd really like to have a chicken coop. I have 2 little girls. We homeschool, so I think it'd be a really great addition for our family. And like the packet said, it would be historically accurate because they would likely have had livestock. I've also talked to all of my immediate neighbors to make sure that they're personally okay with us having chickens, and they said sure. And we're all on really good terms, so I feel confident if it becomes an issue, they would let me know. And the Playhouse is just so my kids have somewhere to play outside of the actual house.
Good.
And
very good. Thank
that's
you.
about
very
it.
much.
Thank
All
you.
right, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. Next then is the public is now invited to speak. In-person participants, if anybody here wants to speak on that, please line up at the podium to be sworn in. For those wanting to speak remotely by Zoom, the tech team can please play the video.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
And it looks like we have no one with their hand raised at the moment.
Okay, all right, very good. We'll go to the commissioners. If you see someone pop in, it may be appropriate or not at the time to see if they can speak.
Okay.
All right, next then is for our commissioners. Commissioner Roddy, you're up first.
I would only say that I'm delighted on both counts.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioner LaFrance?
I agree.
Okay, Commissioner Morgan?
The core requirement has been met, setback. That was a good thing. And I have one question. Is there any limitation on the inventory of your chicken coop? You don't have chicks. What is the limitation? Are you gonna have a lot? How much you're gonna grow? Or, I mean, you talked about kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is it? I'm kind of curious. Are you gonna sell a chicken?
No, we'll probably name them and consider them our pets and share their eggs
Okay, so
with our
more
neighbors.
their pets. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so we're just, it'll be 4 to 6 chickens, I think was the limit I read for the city of Gaithersburg, and then we plan on just keeping them for eggs.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I have 2 girls.
Oh, okay.
Both of them homeschool.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one is in college, or one's graduated.
Oh, cool.
On the Liberty in August.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't have any
Okay,
problem.
all right, okay.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I like it, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Ramirez, you can ask any questions you like of the applicant or make your statements.
Yes, I'm curious as well.
Yeah, it would be wonderful, just please come and stay up here.
Sorry.
No, it's my fault, I should have just suggested that.
So chicken, all female, no roosters?
That's what I was going to
Correct.
ask.
Yes. So you can just order them online, and they are sexed, so they ensure that they're all female. And if I get a rooster, then I will do something else with it, and probably not tell my girls.
What do you mean if you get a rooster?
What?
What do you mean if you get a
Well,
rooster?
sometimes I've read that sometimes they sex them
Make
wrong, and then
mistakes.
you get a rooster,
got
and you
it.
don't find out until a few weeks in, and then you can give them away on Craigslist. So that's the plan.
Are snakes an issue with the eggs?
No, we will be digging. So there's hardware wire or hardware cloth that goes around like the wire fence, and you dig down about 12 inches into the ground on the perimeter of the coop to make sure that no rodents or snakes or anything get into the coop. So nothing can dig underneath or come on top, like hawks and things like that. So it'll be fully enclosed.
Thank you. You've done your research well.
Yeah.
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. You had my question, are there going to be any roosters? But I can say that the chicken wire being buried, we've seen people who've come before us had problems with fox digging up that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not our purview to tell you how to build it at all. But I can say that more than likely you may experience problems with that, and one solution would be pour a concrete pad because they can't get through that.
Right. Okay.
But that's not our business to tell you anything.
No,
about
that's good to know. We've seen a fox around.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, you'll see.
Good to know.
If you have chickens, you'll see more.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, this is not a requirement, but a request. If you could consider painting your chicken coop and the playhouse to match the color scheme on your house color scheme is beautiful.
Yeah,
So I would
thank you.
think it would be wonderful if you could do that, but it's not a requirement. We can't require you to.
No, that's the plan. That was
Wonderful.
I didn't know how to change the mock-up, but yeah, we plan to make them
Wonderful.
both match. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's it for us.
Okay.
Anyone calling in? Okay, very
No
good.
one from the
So
public.
next then is, we have the commissioners open forum, but it doesn't sound like anybody really has any issues. So may I have a motion from somebody to approve or deny this application with or without conditions?
I move that we approve HIST 9253-2022, the installation of a chicken coop and a playhouse in the backyard at 104 Chestnut Street. Let's see, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, the staff report findings, and the recommendation, chicken coop playhouse findings to be in compliance with 24-227 2 of the city code.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote. When I call your name, please state aye if you support the motion, nay if you don't. Abstain if you wish. Commissioner Roddy?
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Aye.
And Commissioner Antola says aye. That's 5-0. Congratulations to you. All right, next then is we have their second hop, which is HIST 9246-2022, which is the installation in the rear yard of a 6-foot-tall open board fence and 6-foot-tall board-abutting-board fence at 605 Steinbeck Avenue in the MXD Mixed-Use Development Zone. May we have introduction from staff, please?
Yes, so this is a historic area work permit application, HIST-9246-2022, requesting approval to install a new revised 6-foot tall rear yard fence for the property located at 605 Steinbeck Avenue. In accordance with Section 24-227A of the City Code, an historic area work permit is required for work on public or private property that would affect the historic, archaeological, architectural, or environmental significance of a designated historic resource. The revised 6-foot fence was submitted in accordance with condition of approval number 1 as part of historic area work permit application HIST 9232-2022, approved by the HDC March 23rd, 2022. The rear yard fence proposed during the March meeting was a 6-foot tall board-abutting-board fence, privacy fence, and then during the course of the meeting, the HDC did raise concerns that the proposed fence did not meet the factors to grant approval under Section 24-227.2A, as the privacy fence removed the visual connections among the structures that comprise the historically designated England Crown Farm designation. The HDC preferred an open board on-board fence and recommended gaps between the panels of 1.5 to 2 inches. As stated earlier, a condition of approval was included requiring the applicant to return to the HDC for approval of a revised fence design in the rear yard. I also want to note that we have received 2 additional comments, public comments since 5 p.m. I did email that to the commissioners, but I also provided you hard copies of that just in case you didn't get your email. They are Exhibit 23 and 24 in your packet. And I am happy to read in the staff recommendation this time if you'd like me to, or I can read it in later if you'd like that as well.
You're talking about those 2 additional emails?
No, just the recommendation. The staff recommends that the Historic District Commission, based on the exhibit submitted, the applicant's testimony, the staff report findings, and recommendation grant HIST 9246-2022, installation of a rear yard fence, finding it be in compliance with Section 24-227.2 of the City Code. And I will turn the presentation over to the property owners to present the application.
Okay, thank you. Welcome back.
Hello, welcome.
We'd like to now swear you guys in.
If you could raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give in this matter shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Do.
I do. I do have a question, though. This wasn't done last time we were here. I'm just curious.
We're doing it now.
I'm so sorry, I didn't hear your question.
We didn't do it last time.
No, I know, it was a new procedure that we were discussing last month to employ, and it was decided to employ it.
Oh, I mean, the truth is great. I'm on board.
Okay, so please, welcome again, welcome back, and continue and state any other thoughts that you have to add to what Chris has already said.
Okay. Maybe?
All right. So, well, yes, welcome back. So at the guidance, at HGC's guidance, we worked with the city staff to present you with a revised application that is in compliance with all laws, consistent with the spirit and the purpose of those laws as stated by city staff and council. The proposed fence is a semi-transparent fence, open board fence with 2 areas of privacy fencing. One at the deck, as suggested by city staff in their March recommendations, citing precedent for this solution is found in the properties that border Constitution Gardens, a city park on Brooks Ave, and abutting the new Crown construction, which is not governed by the historic principles discussed below and allowed by right of law. The proposed is the compromise that the HDC asked for, us to reflect upon at the previous meeting. The semi-transparent open board fence is standard, visually appealing option that allows for light and air flow, as well as open visual connection as they do not feel constricting. The purpose of the proposed fence accomplishes the goals of the board and keeps a connected feeling between the 2 historic parcels, as well as allowing for the public to enjoy a view of the historic structures. We sincerely hope that the HGC sees and recognizes the effort, as the city already has. The standard spacing on the semi-transparent fence is 7/8, which is a standard spacing in semi-transparent fencing between the boards. This is the cost-effective compromise to the board-abutting-board privacy fence that we proposed before, and the 1/2 inch custom shadow fence, which has proven to be infeasible due to the costs involved. Fencing is not an inexpensive home improvement and should not be dismissed as a casual endeavor. We worked extremely hard to find a decently priced local Gaithersburg independent contractor for this work. On a personal note, I'd like to note that we've been forced to push back our move date. Keep in mind that with supply chain issues and continuing to be an increasing burden due to the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, prices and inflation are going through the roof. There are not many affordable options as there's not as many affordable options as there once were, and our timeline is now becoming a critical issue. We are carrying 2 houses. This is becoming an extreme financial burden. And moreover, this is an entirely unexpected financial burden, as we had no idea that there would be an issue even with our original design until 5 days before our last meeting. We are now faced with a very unexpected and nerve-wracking financial crisis. I want to be very clear on the effect here. We love this house, and it would be a tragedy both emotionally and financially if we were driven from it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to add anything?
I think that the staff report very clearly lays out all the applicable laws and that we're within the confines of those laws, both in the intent and to the letter. So I'm going to stick behind the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to say anything?
I wasn't sworn. I didn't raise my hand.
You could be sworn and then.
I'm a concerned father.
Oh, okay, very good.
Trying to show support for
that's
kids.
I would like to add, we were alerted that some of the neighbors have retained counsel for this meeting yesterday. So we wanted to have someone here to represent our interests, and obviously 1 day's notice isn't a lot to get an attorney. Thankfully, my father is an attorney. He spent his entire career at the largest international law firm. He also teaches at Georgetown Law currently, so he is at least able to help us in a pinch. He is not a real estate lawyer, so he's not here in that capacity, but he does teach constitutional law, and some of those issues are here, so he's here to help us to the best of his abilities.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, very good, thank you. All right, next then is the public is now invited to speak. I understand that there is an attorney representing the residents, 4 residents who the attorney himself or herself wishes to speak on behalf of those residents and has agreed to speak. Oh, hello, welcome. No more than 10 minutes, is that correct? You're okay with that?
That is correct, and thank you, your staff.
Please hold on, please. What we want to do is give you your time, but also I believe we want to, Eric, swear her in.
Sure. Could you also state the residents that you are representing?
My name is Michelle Rosenfeld with the Law Office of Michelle Rosenfeld, LLC, and I am here on behalf of Raymond and Linda Lynn at 481 Salk Circle and Joseph and Sophia Son at 485 Salk Circle.
Thank you. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give in this matter will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Feel free to begin.
And if possible, it would help if the letter that I sent in could be brought up on the screen. By way of background, I'd like to introduce the property as it was originally approved in the location and in the design that both the historic site and the surrounding properties were developed. As I'm sure you know, this property was originally approved as part of the original Crown Farm site development plan. And as such, it was originally reviewed by the council as part of the overall, schematic development plan in 2011. Large development, there were lots of considerations before the council. However, as part of it, there was definitely specific consideration of this particular property. On page 3 of my letter, there is a graphic, figure number 2, and I don't know if it's possible to bring my letter up or not. It is? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, as you can see, figure 2, it has the boundaries of what is called Neighborhood 2 in the Crown Farm development. Neighborhood 2 clearly within the boundaries shows the England Crown property. And if you look at figure 1, Neighborhood 2, the development summary identifies the specific units within Neighborhood 2, and it has townhomes and single-family homes, and it also says one historical house, and that obviously is this house. Where I really want to draw your particular attention is to figures 2 and 3, because this comes from the staff report and it comes from the developer submissions from 2011 when this Crown Farm development was under consideration. There was specific discussion about how the layout of the development should be planned around this property. And it says that specifically they created view sheds to allow this property to be seen openly from various locations within the community. They reoriented the street fronting the England Crown property so that the terminus would allow a view shed from the neighborhood to the street, and it also specifically reoriented the lots surrounding it. I'd like you to show you figure 5. And on figure 5, on page 4, you can see there's a rectangle in blue. That is the Sun property. That is the house where they now live. That house was specifically reoriented at the direction of the council so that instead of taking the length of the property, it was moved back, and the entire, what would have been the front yard of that property became Parcel E, an unbuildable parcel, specifically to create an open view shed to the England Crown house. So, in terms of the original intent and layout of the overall Crown Farm subdivision, a fence that blocks the view shed of this property, a 6-foot fence anywhere on this property, really violates the spirit and the intent of what the the city council was trying to achieve. And I did get from staff a copy of the actual official stamped plan, which confirms that this is in the Crown Farm Neighborhood 2. So when we go to the guidelines that apply to the Neighborhood 2, there are specific limitations. First, the rear yard fencing should not be more than 5 feet tall, period. It's not allowed. Secondly, the board-on-board fencing, the neighborhood guidelines say that the board-on-board fencing is only intended in rear yards to shield offensive views like parking, offensive views like dumpsters, offensive views. It is certainly not within my experience that the neighboring properties are offensive views, and it's certainly not my experience that offensive views would be the park to the rear. So the proposed fencing, whatever height, board on board, violates the Neighborhood 2 guidelines, both with respect to height as well as with respect to the type of fencing that would be allowed under the Neighborhood 2 guidelines. And I would show you figures 9 and 10, give you sort of a visual. They're a visual rendering of what this fencing would look like if it were actually constructed. Finally, I'd like to point you to the historic standards that govern a HOP. And under 24.227.2A4, there's a number of factors that you consider, but this one in particular, The viewshed considerations memorialized in the City Council's deliberations, even above and beyond the Neighborhood 2 guidelines, they show how this particular property relates to the community at large. This is the signature property within this community. And so when you consider the aesthetic factors, highly pertinent to the City Council's consideration of these issues at the time that it looked at this development plan, it becomes clear that not only for historic reasons, not only for the schematic development plan and the Neighborhood 2 guidelines, for all of those reasons, the fencing, both design, height, and layout that have been proposed simply are not compatible with the spirit or the law that governs this particular property. Our request is that the entire fence be picket or wrought iron, that none of the fencing on the property exceed 3 feet in height, and that the fencing along the property line next to the Salk Circle homes be placed within the farmhouse property line at the back corner, running straight and perpendicular to the street. And if I can take you back to page 4 of my letter, figure 5, as you can see, at the time that the Sun property the home was reoriented, it really pushed the front corner of their house against the front property line. If the fencing is not run perpendicular from the rear property line of the England Crown House up to the street, it essentially punishes that property owner for living in a house that had a reduced property size precisely to protect the viewshed of the England Crown House. And that's simply unfair. It's unequitable for them to have a fencing that runs right up to the edge of their house, where they have windows, where they have view sheds, and where they have a deck. So for all of these reasons, legal and policy, good planning, good historic preservation, we ask that you limit the height of the fence in its entirety to no more than 3 feet, that it be picket or wrought iron, and that along the circle property line, that it be squared off and made a perpendicular fence instead of this really jagged, odd-looking, just very unusual-looking fence in any setting, even in a contemporary setting. It would be an unusual configuration and certainly is not compatible with the setting of this particular location. So I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. I would say when we go for each commissioner to speak their thoughts, we would like you to come back to the podium at that time.
I would be happy to.
Okay, thank you so much. I guess that's me. I'm not sure why it's doing that. All right, so next then is anybody from the city. Let me ask you, City Attorney.
Excuse me, Dean, did we let everyone speak?
I'm going to, what I was going to say is, do you want to address the city's stance before we go to the public, or do it after could we go to the public?
I think we should do the public first.
Okay, very
Finish
good.
all opposition.
Okay, very good. All right, so now the public is invited to speak. In-person participants, please line up at the podium to be sworn in. For those wanting to speak remotely by Zoom, the tech team will play a video at that time. So let's first hear from the people who are here now.
Do you want to square them all at the same time?
Yes. So everybody that intends to speak in opposition to the work permit, if you could line up in a single file line behind the podium. Right now, please.
Just me.
Okay, okay.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give tonight is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mike Bernstein, should I go?
Yes, please.
Resident 40 years at Gaithersburg, and I've lived in Crown Farm since 2018. Not an attorney, obviously. I would think that this is the reason why we're here today. This is your job, right? So we're not talking about a 2-year-old townhouse that was just constructed after 3 months. We're talking about the landmark home within our community that has been there for decades. The configuration that you might have saw on the screen is not the configuration that I think that they're intending to build. That was the concessions that we were making. Hopefully you have that there. I would think that this is the reason why you're even on this board, because it's such a unique, odd configuration. There's no one in the neighborhood, including myself, that has a fence. So there's nothing preventing them from moving in. There's no hardship. This is the home that they purchased. The results of them wanting to build a fence is that's their opinion, and not ours. I just think that it's just odd that we would have no rights whatsoever to have the landmark home to be covered up by a 6 foot long, 6 foot high fence. I live right across the street, and it's right in our common area where everyone walks their dogs and gathers. It just seems really strange and odd and out of place to be in our neighborhood with a fence like that. I just thought I would just give my humble opinion.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. No one else is lined up? Okay, then for the public, to speak, yes, sir, okay. That's okay, please come up and be sworn in. Hold on.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you give tonight is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Please state your name and district.
My name is Joseph Son at 485 Sark Circle. So yeah, just a few questions that I wanted to mention. I had a chance to go over the last time. At the public hearing, didn't have chance to read all the email correspondence between the applicants and the city staff. So I just had a chance. So it's not just us. If you look at the email between the applicants and the city staff, February 4th, basically staff recommended to see page 26 of the design guideline. It says the fences should be simple wooden pickets or wrought iron of simple design if visible from the street. If you look at this beautiful farmhouse from Steinbeck, from Discovery, you can see the house is visible. If any fence, except for the little, the back side and then corner, all the fences will be visible from the street. That's the reason why, because of this, increased the visibility of this house. We didn't know, but we found out that my house was rotated 90 degrees. That's how it ended, that there's no land behind my deck. It's like literally 3 steps from that is the farmhouse property line. Having this 6-foot fence will definitely cover up, visibility of that house. And even from the deck coverage, the other side, that this farmhouse is completely visible, and having this 6-foot fence will definitely cover that. And it's not just me.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
Yes.
Can you state your name?
Oh, Joseph Son.
Joseph Son. So you're represented by Mrs. Rosenfeld.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Then he can't speak at this time. He spoke. The attorney spoke on his behalf.
Oh.
Oh, is it right?
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right.
Thank you very much. I didn't realize.
Raise your right hand. What's your name?
Oscar Pineda.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give in this matter shall be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I just want to see if we can call attention to figures 6 and 7 on page 5. Because I think these two tell the story, actually. No. What you do? Oh, this letter. Basically, can I pass this along so you all can see it? Got it? Okay. So if you look at figure 6, we went and figured out the elevation. The elevation of that hill is about 5 feet. The fence would be 6 feet. That makes the elevation of that fence about 10 to 11 feet from the street level. That's a high fence. That's basically a fort. And figure 7, if you take a look at how this fence is configured, even an open picket fence, it is all kinds of wrong. I mean, it takes a kind of a left turn right at their deck. we never, I stated the last time we were here, we were not against a fence. Nobody has a fence, but if they want a fence, an open picket fence and a wrought iron fence would be really pretty, and it would be an asset, to that property. So that's it. I wanted to point that out. The figure 6, as I said, elevates that fence to about 10 to 11 feet. And the other one, I don't know what else to say. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, welcome.
Raise
Hello.
your
Eileen
right hand,
Panetta.
please. Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and your district.
Eileen Panetta, 444 Sauk Circle. So when my husband and I walked the property, and where the fence is, they're proposing to put the fence, it's actually at the bottom of the hill. So if you're standing at the bottom of the hill where the fence is proposed, and it's a 6-foot fence, if you're standing on our street, you could still see up, and you could still see into the property. So in terms of quote-unquote privacy, it's not really covering anything of the house. It's just, it's an eyesore, really, at the bottom of this hill. So in terms of the argument of it being a privacy fence, to me, it doesn't make any sense of it being down low. I would think they'd want it higher up. Wow, that was a quick 3 minutes.
Okay.
Anyway, that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else before we go to Zoom? Okay, I see no one. Okay, so for those wanting to speak remotely by Zoom, the tech team, please play the video.
Good evening. If you've connected to the meeting tonight via Zoom and you're on a desktop or a laptop and you wish to make a public comment, we can't currently see or hear you. What you need to do, please, is wiggle your mouse around and look towards the bottom center of your screen. You should see a raise hand button. Go ahead and click on that now for us, please. Alternatively, if you've connected in via telephone, you can press *9.
So we have, tech team can pull up Richard Burka, please.
You want me to begin?
First, we have to swear you in.
Mr. Burka, can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Welcome. Please speak. You have 3 minutes, as everyone else does.
Well, one thing that's neglected to be mentioned is if you are walking from the Sue's house, or the son's house, on the corner of Steinbeck and Sauk Circle towards the Coverly, when you're walking up that sidewalk with the addition of the garage that was added to the farmhouse, their backyard is extremely private. You cannot see into their backyard at all with that garage. And that point hasn't been raised yet either. And if privacy was the real issue, you don't buy in a homeowners association. You go to a farm somewhere or not in a totally residential area if that's what your primary concern is. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
And if we can go to the next speaker, Dallas Mossman. Mr. Mossman, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
Okay, hold on, please. We'd like you to be sworn in.
Mr. Lossman, can you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give in this matter tonight will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Welcome. Please begin.
Good evening. My name is Dallas Mossman. I live at 611 Crown Park Avenue. The back of my house faces the alley that looks directly down the side of the property in question. The reason I joined, well, first of all, the reason why I'm not there in person is because I have a date with a scalpel in the morning, so I thought it was not a good idea to attend in person. But I did want to explain that from my perspective, looking down this pathway, or looking down the alley at the property in question, where they have reoriented the picket fence makes perfect sense to me because it follows the property lines. In fact, I think I like that better than making the fence perpendicular because it follows the property line and it would go directly across the end of the alley. So from my perspective, where the picket fence resides, I don't have a problem. As far as the other portion of the fence, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in the 1960s and the 1970s in rural parts of Michigan where they didn't have HOAs. They didn't have people telling them what they could and could not build. So I would be reluctant to vote one way or another as far as telling people what they can't build. The truth is I sit here, I work from home a lot, and I see the reasoning why this couple wanted to have a little bit of privacy built into their environment, because there are a lot of people walking along their property line. There are a lot of people who are walking through their property lines. And the truth is that this house 5 or 6 years ago was a rundown shack with peeling paint and messed up windows, and it looked horrible. And I have to commend the people who purchased the property. They have made it look very nice. From the view that I have looking out at the property, it's striking. If they want to protect their privacy by building a fence, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have an issue with it. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Tracy Melvin.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Hold on. We'd like to swear you in.
Ms. Melvin, can you please raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you will give in this matter tonight will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please begin.
So I live at 428 Hendricks, so I'm in Crown on a different street. But I don't find the reasons given by the owner for the need for such a fence substantial enough to outweigh the public's interest in keeping the property's connection to its surrounding community and Crown residents. The proposed fence, in my view, is not at all consistent with the architecture that exists in the Crown neighborhood and the neighboring space, no matter where it's located on the property. And Crown is an open community where no homes have yard fences, let alone privacy fences. The proposed fence would negatively impact the beauty of the home and the character of the historic property. Many residents, including my family, walk the neighborhood daily, and we love to see the historic home and the farm buildings as a whole, and they add undeniable charm and character to Crown. It's a feature that residents were aware of when they were buying here, and we really enjoy viewing the property. The proposed fence would sort of slice up and destroy the home's connectedness to the farm buildings by adding a barrier, and would not correspond at all with the style of the house or the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And it would essentially look and function like a wall. Any change that you do approve, I think, should be in line with the characteristics of the neighborhood and not be a detriment to residents' enjoyment of their homes and their views. And the proposed fence is aesthetically incompatible with the entire rest of the Crown community, which is open, walkable, and interconnected. And it would reduce residents and the public's enjoyment of this lovely part of Crown. And it's also not consistent with the type of fencing that I would think a house of this type would historically have. And I know it's been pointed out before that the original farmhouse did not have any type of fence such as like what's being proposed. I also wanted to recommend that signage be considered to discourage people who are looking into the house and that type of thing. I'm sure this is something that people that occupy former model homes have had to deal with. It's not unique to this property and this residence. I think it's reasonable to expect that any historic property may garner public interest, and it's not unusual for people to be curious, especially given that the Crown Farm Manor House is a significant feature in the Crown community. So please don't ignore the fact that the home and adjacent farm buildings are a highlight in the community, and don't allow what are essentially walls to create barriers to the public's enjoyment of this part of the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have Mark Wexler is next.
Hello, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Hold on, we'd like to have you sworn in now.
Sir, can you please raise your right hand?
Right.
Do you solemnly swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you will give tonight is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and your district.
Mark Wexler, 417 Sauk Circle.
Please begin.
Okay. I just wanted to quickly add to other comments this evening. There was an appeal to compassion by the homeowners, and I just want to say that the residents of Crown also share that appeal. The homeowners say that they were impacted both financially and emotionally from this, this debate that's happening here and the decision that may ultimately have to be made, and that the Crown homeowners are also impacted financially and emotionally in response to the decision being made by the homeowners themselves. And then the other thing is I would like to ask, it was a lot of material to read through, but I think the Historic District Commission last time recommended a gap of 1.5 to 3 between planks. That was something that was sort of brokered and considered. I even think the homeowners were open to that type of a plan. And I'm not sure what was ultimately submitted as a recommendation by the homeowners, but just wanted to make sure that that was that it was in that range. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Lisa Avani.
Hello, are you on?
Hello. Hi. So, no, it's actually her husband, Oliver. Sorry, it's under her name.
I'm sorry.
It's Oliver.
Oliver
Mr. Avani, can you please raise your right hand? Will do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give in this matter here tonight will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Yeah, so it's actually Oliver Barrow. Yeah, we live at 508 Steinbeck. Just moved in about 2 months back.
Okay, begin.
Yeah, so so the 508 Steinbeck is actually the former model home. Has fantastic views of the farmhouse. Actually, we actually have a whole room downstairs themed around the farmhouse that was built in as part of the original build of the house. Just because obviously the clue is in the name. It's a Crown Farm community. And the farm is a central part of that. We actually have a very young daughter. Her bedroom looks out onto the farm. We love sitting there at night with her. She loves animals, loves farms. She's only under 2 years old. So she loves to look out there, and we look out for squirrels, look out for foxes, all the kind of fun stuff she enjoys doing out there. So we would just absolutely hate to see kind of fences erected there. We're very sympathetic to their position. I mean, my father-in-law owned this home before us, and because it was the ex-model, it wasn't unusual for people to wander in. There was even, I think, Chinese house hunters showed up once to film. But as soon as they put up a private property sign, all that stopped. There was nobody ever kind of let themselves in again. So, to me, that seems the obvious solution. And again, I think someone raised the point that there is no one living there currently. So I think obviously that's encouraging people to go up in a way that, again, it's a very friendly neighborhood. I'm sure once they put a sign up, once there's visible signs of occupancy, that will stop almost immediately. But we can speak to our experience here that that's exactly what happened. So like I say, as many people have echoed, it's the farm is really a central part of the whole community, both aesthetically and really just almost as a hub. People that use the field next to it for their dogs, for kids playing, stuff like that. Really as a focal point. And I would hope anyone that bought into the place would be fully aware of that. And I think putting up such a large fence really just kind of destroys that link to the community, as a few people have mentioned. A smaller fence to me accomplishes everything they're looking for, but without sort of decoupling the house from the community around it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I see no one else with their hand raised.
Okay, all right. Anyone else from the audience who wants to speak one last time before we close public comments? And I
Mr. Chair,
see no one.
if you intend on cross-examining the attorney or asking a few more questions, then I would advise doing that before we do rebuttal.
Okay, you're saying to go to the commission before the...
No, I'm saying call the attorney back up for
Right.
questions, because I believe that you said that you wanted to call her back up and you have a few more
I'm
questions.
saying I was saying when the commission is debating, we have the opportunity to ask questions, and it would be of the attorney for any of us who wants to do that. What I'm asking you is, do you want to state the city's position on this matter before or after we debate? I would believe you want to state before we debate.
Right. First, we have to ask the applicants if they have any rebuttal for the opposition.
Okay, all right, very good. Applicants, do you have any things you would like to add or question about anything that's been said by?
I mean, yes, a few things to point out, and I don't know what's going to be addressed, so this is a difficult place to be in because the city obviously has a position on some of the things that we would normally address. Especially around the idea of the design guidelines versus the site plans. It was noted, discussion was made about the design guidelines for Crown. We have had correspondence both with the city that the Crown design guidelines do not apply to this home. Yes, it is in District 2, but the design guidelines do not apply to this residence. That has been a position that was made by the city. I think that's important given a lot of the remarks that were made. A few of the other things to discuss, I think one of the big points was the idea of sightlines. Sightlines were brought up in one of the, in the first response. If you actually look at the document that discusses sightlines, the movement of that property for the sightlines from streetscape sightlines are important. They're discussed in the historic guidelines. One of the reasons for picket fences in the front of the house is so you don't disrupt sightlines. We discussed why the location of the fences are what they are, so that they don't disturb the streetscape guidelines. None of the fencing that's proposed in this matter, which is the backyard fencing, actually has an impact on those sightlines. The front sight line from down the street, the head-on street, it's the 3-foot picket fence. From the edge of the circle, again, 3-foot picket fence, and the house is sitting up on a hill. And actually from the other end, the other corner of that street, you're looking up, the house is sitting up on a hill. As we discussed before, the topography is that section of fence is actually located about 3 feet down, downhill from the house. So you're still seeing the whole broadside of the home. Actually, you're seeing everything from the windowsills up. So this idea of this fence actually encroaching those sight lines that are brought up, that were such an important measure, this fence actually doesn't do that, the fence that we're discussing right now.
I have a few things.
Yep.
It's going to probably sound jumbled because it's relating to a lot of different people
That's
that
okay.
were speaking.
That's
There seems to be some assertion that the fencing for this house should be exactly what's in the Crown community. I don't think it makes sense to have necessarily new construction govern what happens in a historic home that predated the new construction. I'd also like to point out, because there seems to be some confusion still, this home is not actually part of the Crown HOA.
And to put an exclamation on that, there was a decision made to not have this home part of the HOA when the home was sold last year as a private parcel off from the developer. There was a choice and a chance at that point to make it part of the HOA, and it was not included in the HOA.
Also, a note as to, there were some discussions regarding the people coming onto property. And I would like to note that unfortunately, we recently found food containers in the historic log house,
which has a no trespassing and private property sign posted in the windows of that log house.
within the house itself, not outside, so it's within our rights to do so. So it's really upsetting to us that people would go in there and use it as, I don't know, a clubhouse, and we wouldn't want the historic structure to be damaged because it's beautiful, and obviously we would have to pay to fix that. It's private property. The city would not be in charge of fixing that, but it's very concerning that people are going in there. We cannot lock it because the beautiful old doors that we do not want to mess with have skeleton keys that were not passed on to us. I don't think they had them. They don't exist, and we don't know how to figure that out as of now. But so we cannot lock it, and people are going into it, which is an issue. Sure.
And to add to that, at present, we do have a historic notice for putting up a private property sign. We also have a current rope across the front porch because we've experienced property damage on the front porch. The paint's up, there's broken boards, and we still, as Exhibit 16A will show, have people reading the sign that says that we're putting up a private property sign, walking up through the bushes and climbing over the rope on the fence. So I think saying that just a private property sign is going to deter people between the food containers in our outbuildings and people blatantly walking over a rope and reading a sign that says we're posting a private property sign, I think that doesn't quite fit.
And one last point, sorry. The fence line as proposed and corrected by the community actually changes the front fence, which from my understanding is already approved. So I don't believe that that's up for debate at the moment.
Okay. Anything further?
I think that's it at the
Okay,
moment.
very good. Thank you. Eric, is it time for you now, or I would suggest it would be, just so then we have all the information when we debate.
Sure. Two things as to what Mrs. Rosenfeld stated in her comments. First, as to the proper design guidelines. Before this hearing and the previous hearing, me and legal staff had a chance to review both the Crown Farm guidelines as well as the Brooks, Russell, and Walker historic guidelines. The issues that we found with the Crown guidelines, and I know the Crown guidelines aren't in the record, so I'll be reading from the copy that I have. The issue with the Crown Farm guidelines is that at the beginning, it itself states that the guidelines apply to Crown Farm in general and govern new construction. There's no doubt that the SDP and the ordinance related to the SDP included the farmhouse within the Crown Farm neighborhood. But I believe that based on the language in the Crown Farm guidelines, it effectively takes the farmhouse outside the scope of these guidelines. Moreover, the Crown Farm guidelines is a 98-page document. Not once in its entirety does it mention the farmhouse throughout the entirety of the document, and there's many maps within the guidelines that entirely exclude or omit the farmhouse from being inside it, from being inside the map. So, based on that, I would say that the Crown Farm guidelines exclude the farmhouse from their scope. When you talk about the Brooks, Russell, and Walker guidelines, that states that it specifically governs Brooks, Russell, and Walker, obviously, but also individually designated sites, which based on the historic district, or the council resolution HDC 108, it was individually designated as a historic site. And the Brooks Russell Walker is the guidelines that the commission uses as a default. So based on our analysis of the Crown guidelines and the Brooks guidelines, I would advise the commission to utilize the Brooks guidelines in rendering its decision tonight. That's the issue for the guidelines. Now for the SDP that Ms. Rosenfeld discussed, the SDP, it essentially created conditions on view sheds on the developer, right? Right now we're talking about private citizens who are coming now and providing comment as to the impact on their view sheds. Well, the SDP, although it creates conditions for the developer, those conditions don't automatically translate down to the individual homeowners once those homeowners have ownership of the property. It doesn't create property rights or obligations. So for those reasons, I would say that the SDP, although it did impose regulations and reorientations of homes during development, those aren't necessarily going to be imposed on the applicant as homeowners. And then taking it a little further, even if they were, based on the picture that I have up here, packet page 98, I think it's exhibit 2, it shows that the 3-foot picket fence goes up, I believe it's about 50 feet, which allows the view shed from the street to essentially to be maintained by the picket fence. That would be all.
Okay.
As to that.
Okay, very good. All right. Next then is hearing from the commissioners. Commissioner Roddy, you're up first.
Thank you. I would begin by saying that I thought we had reached last month a breakthrough when we talked about the lattice-topped fence, and I confess that only 3 words in Exhibit 4 seem to address that particular issue. Now, I want to come back to that after I finish the rest of it.
Can I interject something on that?
Sure can.
From what I understand, from understanding what you mean by the lattice-top fence, Greg had said that that's not a fence type that is allowed within the district. So I believe it was proposed.
Okay.
I love that fence type, but I don't believe we're allowed to use it and be in conformance with the guidelines.
All right, well, that being said, I still want to come back to the issue of Exhibit 4, but as I understand it, and Mr. Pearl can correct me if I'm wrong, the HDC would be legally supported if it agreed to a 6-foot fence, board-abutting-board all the way around, if certain conditions were met, specifically those that are envisioned in 24.227.2b, that we are to be lenient in judgment unless it would seriously impair the historic or architectural significance of the historic resources. Is that correct?
So as to leniency, 24.227.2b, it essentially creates a two-step process for the commission to determine whether it should be lenient to any given work permit application. The first step is to determine whether the fence plan, as brought forth by the applicants today, whether that fence plan is either, 1, a plan for a structure of little historical or design significance, or 2, a plan involving new construction. If it's neither of those, if the commission answers the first step in the negative, that's it. The leniency is not given, right? If it is one of those 2, then it proceeds to the second step, which is the caveat. And the commission needs to determine whether the fence would seriously impair the historic or architectural significance of the historic resource. And if it decides that it does significantly impair, then again, leniency is not to be given. And I think the important part in answering the second step is the fact that the farmhouse and several other buildings were designated a historic resource as a whole. And whether, in order for the commission to correctly determine if there is serious impairment, the commission needs to determine whether the fence would essentially dismantle the context of the farm and segregate the farmhouse from those other historical buildings.
Yes, but in short, I believe I read your answer to be that under certain circumstances, this commission could approve a 6-foot fence, abutting board.
If it's lenient, right? Because it does fit within the guidelines, but again, it can deviate from the guidelines.
I will add also, the design guidelines do allow a rear yard fence to be up to a maximum of 6 feet tall.
Yes.
As well as the city code.
Yes.
So yes, the Historic District Commission does have the authority to approve a 6-foot fence, regardless of being lenient or not. Again, the guidelines and the city code do allow a 6-foot tall fence in the rear yard.
It's approvable.
Thank you. I guess what I want to say is that there have been a number of unfortunate circumstances and decisions that have led up to the point where we find ourselves tonight. I don't believe you are bad people. I don't believe you are bad people in any way. We have an unfortunate situation and we have to figure out where we go from here. And as a longtime Gaithersburg resident, I would like to say that I'm interested in building a community that would incorporate all of you. And I'd like to see that this would lead to some invitations for coffee in the morning rather than an invitation for dueling pistols out at dawn. It just doesn't make any sense. Is there any way that we could make some accommodations? I suggested last month that perhaps a buffer of a fence short of the property line, enclosing an area much closer to the house for privacy or exclusivity purposes. I would ask you to think about whether that is a possibility. I asked council there to examine whether or not, what is the outlying possibility of a 6-foot fence abutting board all the way around, and he says it is a possibility. As someone who practiced law for a long time, it was my experience, it is better to consider negotiating a situation where you can come away and avoid a decision based on subjectivity. The subjectivity being a judgment on whether it is seriously impairing the historical or architectural significance of the historic resource. Are you willing to take a chance? Betting all your money on your side as opposed to negotiating some sort of a median settlement here. Think about it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Commissioner LaFrance.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I do believe that this home is one of the most historic structures in the Crown Farm. So we should consider our recommendation, our decisions to be strong. I would like to suggest, I think it should be fence consistency to be historically appropriate for the property. The style should be the same throughout. And if it were my preference based on the evidence, I would like to see all of it be 3 feet tall. But to include the front yard, even though typically we would not include the front yard. It would go up to the back of the house. But you've proven in evidence that there's been trespass, and there will likely be more trespass. So,
I just would like to remind the commission the front yard 3-foot tall picket fence was approved at the last HDC meeting. The fence we're talking tonight is about the rear yard fence.
thank you. I only stated that because I understand that our audience has never, none of you have ever done this before. So I'm trying to clarify our thinking and also to remind you that we have standards that we need to stick to, Secretary of Interior standards, and also the guidelines for the neighborhoods. So, excuse me, I'm just trying to let you know why we make the decisions we make and what we're basing it on. And the voice of the community does have some weight, but the evidence overall has to have the most weight. And we have pictorial evidence of a picket fence, and a picket fence that is not so narrow between the pickets. So if I were to support something, I would like to support something that's in evidence, which is a picket fence, which is wider in between the pickets, because we have a picture that proves a fence very much like that was already there. And the other thing is it's a unique property because it's visible from all sides. So leniency, in my opinion, is not garnered here because it is an all-sided view property, and sadly, you just really don't have a backyard. If the board is more supportive of a taller fence in a certain place, I think it should be minimal or not at all, and just be 3 feet all the way around the property. And I also would like to remind us that also in evidence is a letter from Miss Judy Christensen, who offers other options for screening that I really would like the applicants to consider. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Morgan?
I would like to go back to last month and my argument and consideration. I have one question. The last time the opposition, when you were here last month, you were totally against any fence. And the attorney shows up today and talk about fence. Was there any, my question, I know when you left here last month, I know you gave some thought to your argument, to your opposition. Was there anywhere in your consideration to give alternative based on their presentation? You talked about a 3-foot fence. That's a question to the attorney. Was there any consideration from last month to where we are today? And then why?
Yes, there was, and in the spirit of compromise and recognizing that the property owners would like to reflect some perimeter boundaries around their property, and again, in the spirit of compromise, we decided to proffer a 3-foot picket fence. We think that the picket look is consistent with the historic setting. We think that it achieves the perimeter security that they're looking for. And candidly, it's my personal view that once the house is occupied, there will be far less incentive for people actually to enter the property and trespass. Right now, with it empty, people feel much more comfortable going into private property. So it was my clients have made it clear in their letter, and I'd like to make clear now that they don't want to be adversaries, but they also don't want a wall that completely blocks their view. And we do think that the testimony and information that we gave regarding the view sheds and the guidelines for Neighborhood 2 really are respectful of the overall design of the Crown Farm, as well as the importance of this historic setting.
All right, thank you. And in a spirit of compromise and I agree with Commissioner what he said. At some point, you got to live together. You in the neighborhood, and I appreciate what you have put into this house. You invested a lot, and you explained that the house is sitting on a hill, right? And then the neighbor wants to see this farmhouse. People around the neighborhood want to experience this farmhouse. They want to appreciate it, but that's your property. That's so. They have expectation, you have expectation, and I understand yours. I agree that the difference between the topography of the land, and when you were describing that, if the house is on a hill, depending on the differential between the top elevation and the lower elevation. If you put a 3-foot fence, I can see how that look, kind of cartoonish, kind of. I can see that visually, but there's so many variables here because there's different consistency. You have 6 foot in the back, you have 3 feet in the front. I agree with my fellow commissioner. Try to get some consistency. If a picket fence, rough iron picket fence is in the front, you want to do that in the back. So the material, the color is consistent throughout the property. That's my that would be my consideration to you. Again, in terms of privacy and security, I understand where you're coming from with people passing through your property and going to the house. I understand that, and a 6-foot fence would give you a lot of privacy and security. I understand that. But again, if you want to do the different variables where you have 3 feet, you have 6 feet, make them consistent with the same material, same paint color, and that would be my suggestion. And I'll kind of rest here.
Thank you very much. Okay. Commissioner?
If I could supplement my answer to Commissioner Roddy earlier about whether a 6-foot board-abutting-board fence would be acceptable. It would be if the only criteria before the commission were the guidelines, review the guidelines. However, the commission has to take into account that there are 5 other factors that go into this process. So a 6-foot board-abutting-board it would pass with flying colors if the only criteria was an analysis of the guidelines, but that's not the case.
Point taken. I was just wanted to establish what would be the worst case that one side would be facing.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioner Ramirez.
Good evening. So I was able to review the application materials, the exhibits, emails from the neighbors in the Crown neighborhood, the testimony and exhibits from the Commission's meeting from March 23rd, 2022, and the most recent exhibits numbered 15 through 20. The neighbors have opposed the fence for various reasons, and I counted 20. I'm sure there's much more, but they included things like the proposal would separate the farmhouse from the other structures on the farm. Future visitors to the park land will have an obstructed view of the historic property. Out of character with the community, inconsistent with the rest of the neighborhood. The type of fence should be architecturally congruent with the structure. It does not do the house justice. Privacy and safety is not an issue. The things are wide open in the community and people feel safe there. There are water flow concerns with the fence. There's a containment pond issue. 485 Salk Circles is a few steps from the deck. Their deck is just a few steps from this proposed fence, and it would block their view of the farmhouse. The residents were told by the builder there could be no change because it's a historic property. We heard it's inconsiderate, it's unfriendly to the existing homeowners. It'll impact our quality of life and interfere with the joy of a small outdoor space and the view of the farmland. The experience of our visitors to the public portion of the site will also be affected. Residents and visitors deserve the opportunity to appreciate the entire historic site without the degree of visual obstruction that would result. The historic property should be open to the streetscape without rigid structures or containment. Because the farmland is to be enjoyed by the public, the entire property is functionally equivalent to a streetscape under the guidelines. Aesthetic factors relating to the surrounding area. The fence would be entirely out of place, both aesthetically and with regard to the open and friendly character of the Crown neighborhood, where no such fences exist. Contrary to the historic designation resolution, and it's contrary to the U.S. Park Service guidelines and the Brooks Russell Walker Historic District Design Guidelines as well. There was an argument that it's contrary to the public portion of the site and the surrounding neighborhood, that the historic farmhouse was a selling point for the residents there now. There are residents who back to the site that had a reasonable expectation to a pastoral view, and I'm down to the last two. A fence separating the house and outbuildings from the remaining buildings owned by the city would be and in conflict with the nature of the community, and a 6-foot board-on-board fence is out of keeping with the historic nature of the home. So earlier we saw a picture of a board-on-board fence, or in the packet in Exhibit 15. Can you tell me where that's located? Is that within the Crown neighborhood?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes. That's actually visible from our porch.
Okay, thank
Or
you.
Depending on which side of our porch you're standing on.
All right. And we reviewed Ms. Rosenfeld's letter, and there was a rendering of the actual location, height, and type of fencing proposed in figures 6 and 7, page 147 of the packet. And I appreciated this because try as I might, I could not picture what was being proposed. 6 and 7 on page 1, sorry, I thought it was 147. There.
There you go.
So thank you for this picture. These pictures are very helpful, and it just goes to show you that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I do not agree that the fence is aesthetically unpleasing. The modern fences that are being built today are beautiful and are actually works of art. I don't agree that the fence is not architecturally congruent with the farmhouse. Many historic homes in our community, and I'm within the Brooks Walker Russell Historic District, have a variety of designs to include board-on-board and board-abutting-board, etc. I don't believe it's within the HDC's purview to review this permit based on expectations the existing homeowners held when they purchased their homes, or water flow concerns, or property line disputes. That's not within our mandate. What is in our mandate is 24-227.2. Does preservation equate to having no privacy in your historic home, that people should be able to look in on all sides of the home? I don't think it does. I believe the historic homeowner should be entitled to a tiny sliver of privacy towards the back of their property. I do on mine. I think that the HDC's authority is very narrow, and that surrounding areas as described in sections 24-227.2A1, 3, and section 24-227.2B refer to historic resources, not every structure that surrounds the historic property. So I don't believe we can look at the style of the Crown neighborhood and hold this historic property to those guidelines. If the Crown neighborhoods have an open concept, there's no such restriction for this property. The farmhouse property, by its very nature, is incongruent with the rest of the Crown neighborhood. We drove over there today, and it really sticks out. like a sore thumb. And that's a positive. Building these fences and not building these fences are irrelevant in keeping in character with the rest of the community. The property by its nature is inconsistent with the rest of the neighborhood. So in conclusion, I'm glad the homeowners have compromised in order for the public to continue to appreciate the historic and architectural significance of their property. By agreeing to a picket fence and the open board-on-board fence, this is enough space for the public to appreciate this historic property. I think the board-abutting-board fence will not seriously impair the historic or architectural significance of the surrounding historic resources. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well thought out. Okay, I'm next and last. I can say that I haven't heard anything tonight that I didn't hear last time. That is, the ideas of one camp are still similar than it was last month, and the ideas of the other camp are still similar. And the idea, what I'm going with, is that no one is going to be happy with the decision that's made tonight. So everybody just be prepared for that, because half is going to be happy, half is not, regardless of where you sit. But anyway, I believe, as I did last time, that the homeowner has the right to some privacy. I believe that they have a right to put a fence around their property. I believe that the city guidelines allow that, and that's one of the reasons that they have that right. It's allowed. And I also think that it is important, if somebody does have a concern of safety, that they do have the ability to enclose their property, particularly since it's right now adjacent to extremely public property. That is, the frontscape, the front streetscape obviously is, but the back of the house is completely open, and that's probably the bigger problem that they're encountering, is people don't realize that it's private property. I can tell you that there's workers throughout my community, and I have a corner lot, and they believe that that may be part of the community. So they're always trying to do things to that area. And so I don't want to put a fence up, but I do realize that people do think that part of my property is public property, so I get that. And in their particular case, people will be gathering on that back area because it's meant to be gathered. And so most others won't realize what's private and what's not. So I believe that a fence is required, it should be allowed. And I don't see any legal reason why it can't. The other good part is that the residents did make a move to allow, to agree to a fence, even if it is only a 3-foot tall fence. And that's commendable, and I appreciate that. I do also believe that the house does have historic significance, and I do not think that it should be completely impaired, the view to it. I have believed a good compromise, and I like to tease that a compromise is where no one is happy, but everybody will get a little bit. And I believe that a fence should be allowed, but if it is open as reasonably possible to a view, that it will be a compromise that no one will be perfectly happy with, but they'll be partially happy with, both sides. So I was of the mindset last month, and still am this month, to allow one of the open fence types that is in the district's guidelines, that is the Brooks-Russell-Walker guidelines, to be used. Now, out of the 4 that are on within the packet, I'm thinking that the one that is closest to what the homeowners are looking for would be the open board-on-board. The wrought iron rail, I think, is nice, but I don't think that they want that at all. The post and wire mesh, I don't think they want at all. I do know that they want the board-abutting-board, but I'm of the mindset that that, to me, is the least desirable fence of all, because it does put no view, really, towards your house. And I believe that an open board on board will give you the safety, the security, just as much as a closed board on board. Nobody can go through the open gaps. So to me, I would never vote for the the closed board on board, but I believe that the open board on board would be something that would allow Vista into the property, to allow people to see parts of the historic structure. So one of the things that we talked about last time was you were going to be coming back with a mock-up. I don't see one, so I assume that you decided not to make one. All right, not knowing whether or not you were, I assumed you were. I figured out, let me go and see about the sketch that is part of the requirements or the guidelines that you say. And I said last time, I don't know what the gap would be. I said 1.5 inches to 2 inches was my guess. What I did this afternoon was I took the drawing, imported it as a JPEG, imported it into the computer, and brought it into software, computer architectural software, and did measurements exactly what this fence would be. So you guys have a choice as to a 1x4 plank for a board on board, or a 1x6 plank. The drawing that I presented to you guys, or that you have, shows the 1x6 planks at the top, and 1x4 at the bottom. Now the design is identical, but the question is, were these 1x6s or 1x4s? I don't believe I care at all whether you choose 1x4s or versus 1x6s. If in fact we are selecting the open board on board. We didn't go there yet, but I'm saying if you do, and this is where we left our discussion last time, that you were going to be bringing a mock-up to show everybody how open or how visible or how closed it is, and how safe it would be. You physically can't get through these gaps, so you would be safe on there. And so the drawing shows that the gaps, according to the drawing that is part of the guidelines, shows that if you're using 1x6 planks, the gap, you would use 5.5 inch wide planks, of course, as 1x6s. The gap measures to 2 3/4 inches. So you would have the board, a gap, and then another board and a gap. And then if you decided 1x4s met your needs, then that gap would be 1 3/4 inches. Simple high school math shows you that those are equivalent proportions. So the drawing is accurate. And without knowing any other information that we're privy to, other than the guidelines say that these are acceptable, the pickets as well, then I'm of the mindset that if we do select the open board on board, I'm not saying we did that yet, but if we do, then those are the proportions that I would say would be reflective of the original design, and they would both give you security, and it would give the most openness that I think we can expect you guys would be able to live with. That's my own parts of that as far as the board on board, the open board on board. The SDP with view sheds being required by the developer isn't requirement of you as a homeowner. We've already understood that. So thank you for that. But I would also say that based on the decision that was made last month, where the front three sides, the front and two parts of the partial side property lines will be the picket fence. So that's not an issue whatsoever. We've already conceded that you guys are accepting that. We've determined that that is acceptable to us, and we voted that in. So that's going to give no blockage in my mindset of the view sheds. It's low enough where the view sheds are still there to see your house, which I'm happy about. So again, the only thing in my mindset is for us as a commission to then vote on what we believe are the three major functions of this fence, not the front and partial sides, but what's called the rear, which would be the rear and the sides. So based on that, what I do every month, it seems like, when we have something that's so complex, I go down and do a matrix. So as far as I can tell, the concept of putting a rear yard fence is an issue in itself. Do we vote on that as being an issue, allowed or not? Now, keep in mind that the front and the two sides of the front, partial sides, are already approved. So are we saying that that's the only fence we would allow? Secondly is the height. Do we allow 3 foot or 4 foot or 5 foot or 6 foot? The guidelines, which I believe, according to the code, is the Brooks-Russell Walker. And I've heard nothing tonight to say anything different than that. As a matter of fact, it was, to me, reinforced that it's Brooks-Russell Walker for 2 reasons. One is that in the other guidelines, there's no mention of this house at all. That, to me, is the slam dunk. It's not a part of it. So, but the Brooks-Russell Walker is. And so, again, that reinforces that this house is part of that. So we're allowed to go up to 6 feet. So to me is another issue. So do we want 3 foot, or fence it all is one, but do we want it to be 3 foot, or 4 foot, or 5 foot, or 6 foot? Then the third one to me is, third concept is the style. That is, we are, I believe, allowed to choose from these, looks like there's 6 styles, 4 on one sheet, 2 on the other. And so that would be the third concept. And I would believe that our next move would not be to allow them to negotiate amongst themselves, because that's not what tonight's about. Tonight we have to decide. And it's a good suggestion, but that was something that should have occurred prior to tonight. We have no choice but to make this decision tonight. So based on that, this is only open to the commission. I would like you guys to essentially, at this point in time, get ready to vote on those 3 concepts. Now, before we go to vote, let's do it at Commissioner's Open Forum. This is a very serious thing. And so let's talk it through as much as we can. I don't need to call anybody, just interject what your thoughts are on the rear fence at all, the height, and the style. Just jump in.
Well, I think we probably all would agree that a rear fence is permissible, and at the least 3 feet.
Okay. Keep going. Anybody? Just
I do like Commissioner Morgan's suggestion of consistency.
Okay, good.
I don't know what a 6-foot picket fence would look like.
Okay.
I myself would like to see it all 3 foot, all the way around, same exact style, same, all picket.
Okay. Rudy,
Yeah.
you want to throw in before we go to a
I've
vote?
seen a rough iron fence. I've done that before. I
don't believe that's under our consideration.
I know, but I know. But I mean, you've seen it, you don't know what it will look like.
Well,
I do work for the government, so I have done a lot of fence protecting government property. Government has large property, a lot of inventory. So I have done that before, but this is a private, in consideration of proposing, suggesting, I mean, you gotta spend your money. So I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but what is liable in the rear? At least it's 3 feet fence. You can go up to 6 feet. Okay. So, but again, I just want to reiterate consistency. I think I'll stand by that.
Okay.
And we are not precluding a larger fence closer to the house.
Well, that'll be a 4th thing then.
Yeah,
All right.
closer to that. Okay.
That's a 4th thing, all right?
It doesn't have to be a fence, it could be a hedgerow.
Right. Okay, but that's 4 now. Okay, that's good. Okay, good. All right. Kathleen? Any thoughts?
I've pretty much said all my thoughts.
Okay, okay, all right. So now we have 4 columns to fill. Four separate items that will comprise of this fence. Before we go to a vote, is there anything that you're interested in saying?
No, I'm just here just to answer your questions.
Okay.
If the commission has it.
Yes, sir.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
I'm sure everyone familiar with Williamsburg. One of my favorite place to go. Williamsburg is a historical place, basically, the main part of Williamsburg, and they have a lot of picket fence, a lot of large property. You can, and it's built for people to view, basically. A lot of tourists come there, and most of the property have picket fence around the property, and they do have open board-on-board fence too, because I've been there so many times. But it's very consistent. If it's white all around the property. Whereas the variation 3 feet to 6 feet is they try to achieve consistency, and I think that one.
Okay, anybody further before we go to talk about a vote?
I've got just one thing to add. I've got a neighbor right next door, and because the fences were put up by different neighbors, on their lot, they've got a 3-foot picket fence, they've got board on the other side, and then there's a 6-foot picket fence on the other side. So sometimes the property owner doesn't have a choice in the consistency of the fence around their property. There were 2 things I didn't get to ask that I wonder if I can get clarification
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting that you said the Crown developer was the one who sold the property. Was that your seller?
No, so the Crown property was sold in 2019 to an individual who purchased the home and did most of the renovations to the home. For unforeseen circumstances, they were not able to move into the home. They were planning on it. At that time, we stepped in and purchased the home from them. So we picked up, and we've had correspondence with the city before even purchasing the home, during purchasing the home, through this process.
Okay. And then there was the other question. You indicated in the previous meeting that one of the primary bedrooms are on that first level where people were looking into. But I heard you say that you're carrying two properties. So are you living there now or not?
We're currently not, for several reasons. One of them being actually why we, before purchasing this, actually reached out to the city to determine what the guidelines were around the fence. And it was one of our considerations when purchasing this home, because we knew upon purchasing this home that we would be putting in a fence. So we reached out prior to purchasing the home to the city to ask what guidelines were there. There's email correspondence about that in the original packet. Got that guidance, started to work with the city at that point through the purchase of the home, and then immediately upon the purchase of the home, submitted the packet for the fence to be put in, so that we could move this process along. So the whole time we were working on expediency so that we wouldn't have to carry 2 homes. Obviously, there were a slew of issues with that first thing. You can read all about them in the packet. I don't need to go over them all. I'm sure you guys have all read the packets, which led us to the day 5 days before the meeting, where we were informed that our fence wouldn't be approved, which led to the meeting, that then pushed it back another month. So, in fairness, yes, that is a primary bedroom downstairs. It's planned to be a bedroom downstairs. It's got an ensuite down there. We haven't moved in yet, but we haven't moved in for situations beyond our control, which we actually tried to prepare for in the purchasing of this home.
Thank you.
Well, I'm unclear. When you said it earlier about you're carrying 2 homes, are you saying it's because of the fence issue you're carrying 2 homes? Please explain that to me, because I don't understand that.
So there's lots of issues with moving into a new home. One of them was the concerns that we had, which we laid out in that first meeting, about privacy, security. We plan to put that fence in this home to move into this home.
Okay, so I'm not understanding why you can't move into the home while the fence is under consideration.
We just have made the personal choice that we feel more comfortable.
Okay.
In addition, we also want to be able to put in blinds. Like, they're just personal privacy considerations.
That's okay. That answers it.
And to second that, to the last point that we made, without the fence, we'll have to release the home. We'll have to sell the home. Like that the fence was something, which is why we reached out to the city before purchasing this home to ask about the guidelines. It is something that is inherent. So to completely move here while we're debating this, and then to have the fence possibly stricken down so we can't, then all of a sudden we've moved out of our primary residence, and it puts us into a very bad situation.
I don't think this is under our purview.
Thank you. I do agree. All right. Okay. Anything further before we now go to our vote? All right. So now there are 4 issues that deal with this fence, and to me, they're separate decisions that create this final fence. Is there any other item, these are the four, does the rear yard fence, are we allowing it or not? Second is, if we do allow it, what height will it be, 3, 4, 5, or 6? Third is the style, it's gonna be pickets, or open board on board, or closed board on board, or whatever. And the last is will we allow a larger fence closer to the house, or a larger, some kind of visual block closer to the house? So there's those four. Does anybody have any other issue that they want to address in a vote? Okay, all right, so next then is, we're gonna go, as I do each month on particular issues, complex issues. We're gonna start with the first one. So it's rear yard fence. Your vote for a rear yard fence, Commissioner Roddy, at all, yes or no?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner LaFrance, a rear yard fence.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Yes.
Commissioner Ventola says yes. Okay, so that's easy. That's 5-0 on that. Next then is the height. We're allowed to go up to 6 feet, but the front fence that's been approved, the picket, is 3 feet.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair,
Yes,
if I could interject really
Yes.
quickly. Just for the record.
Yes.
I think it's important for Commissioner Ramirez to state that she has reviewed since she was not here at the previous deliberations, to state that she has read and reviewed the record.
That was in the beginning of my
thought
statement,
she
but
said
I
that.
will
She
reiterate
did.
that.
She did say that.
I can
Thank you.
confirm
I
that,
appreciate
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, great question, thank you. We need belt and suspenders, and that's what you guys are here for, so thank you. All right, so next then is the height. So Commissioner Roddy, give me a number between 3 and 6, please.
Well, last month I said the 6-foot fence would cleave. That was the word I used, and I believed it then, and I believed it now. I think 3.
Okay, Commissioner LaFrance.
3.
Commissioner Morgan.
I said 6.
Commissioner Ramirez.
6.
This is a tough one. I don't like the 6-foot fence, but I said last month that if it was open, I would allow it, and I'm gonna stick with that. Now, I'm also saying that there was a picture, maybe we can bring it up, that Judy Christensen had in her presentation, her letter, and it was from today. Yeah, if you can scroll down to the picture. She pointed this out as a reason not to allow a 6-foot board on board. If you guys look at the photo, on the left-hand side is a 6-foot fence.
That's not 6. I'm sorry, it's across
You
the
may be
street from my
right,
house.
but if you-
That's about, see how it's under, a little over where the window is?
Yeah, if you look at the
And
fence
he's
on the
sitting
right-
down.
If you look at the fence on the right, that's.
Oh, I'm not looking at the
Yeah,
ranch.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
looking at the lattice.
Proportional.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the lattice, that's what
That's
she was
the
talking
lattice,
about.
yeah. That's
Not the ranch.
Right, that's the one I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
that
That's
was for the
higher,
privy.
that's higher than half the window height, which is above grade from the foundation.
Okay.
You're saying you know that as a fact that it's not 6 foot?
You're right, it's higher. But those are low windows, just so you know.
Yeah, but look how, all right, don't forget, here's your floor
Yeah.
line.
Yeah.
That's your
Yeah.
floor line. You're
Right,
standing
right,
here.
right.
It is 2 or 3 feet above the floor line. I'm saying that that is not a 3-foot fence.
But
We
look,
agree
look,
with
look at the
that.
stairs, look at the
I'll
raster.
go with you, you're
See
the
raster?
architect, that's not
No,
See the
mine.
raster,
I'm
that's
not
for 3
infallible.
feet.
I'm not infallible. When I look at the right-hand
I'm
side,
gonna go with you guys.
when I look at the right-hand side split rail, and I look at the
Yeah.
left-hand side.
And look at the
rise,
raster, the stairs.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
Yeah, it's
True.
the stairs, it
It's
look
more than 3
proportional,
feet.
yeah.
That's my point. My point is that I really think that that's like a 6 foot. So my point is that that is historically accurate for a picture that's around from the 1800s. So to me, I don't like the idea of a 6-foot fence, but if it is open, I could live with it on the backyard. So that's where I'm going with that vote. So that would be 3-0. It passes for 6 foot.
3-2.
Yes, sorry, 3-2, passes 6 foot. So next then is the style, the picket, open rail, or board on board. open board on board, a closed board on board, or wrought iron, or the post and wire mesh, or the pick, if I didn't say picket. So let us
And this
start.
is for a 6 foot.
Yeah.
Does the 6 foot prevail?
That
Right.
prevailed, yeah.
Okay.
So Commissioner Roddy, what is your thought?
Open board on board.
Open board on board. Okay. Commissioner France.
Picket.
Commissioner Morgan.
Open board on board, painted to match picket fence.
Okay. Commissioner Ramirez.
Open board on board and board abutting board.
You're accepting both?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say picket, 6 foot picket, but open board on board wins with 3 votes to 2 at picket. So open board on board. Next and last is.
If I can interject real
Yes, sir.
quick. Chris, if you could bring up the proposed fence type. I just want to confirm that the proposed fence type that they are proposing, which isn't, okay, that's what I need to confirm.
That's a good point. I'm believing that this is the open board on board, which is part of the.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you all in agreement with that?
Yeah.
Are you all in agreement that the dimensions are correct? That those are the dimensions that we are living with?
Yes.
I don't believe that's the same as this picture.
It's.
No, that's what he's getting to.
He did, he pulled that and.
I scanned it
Scanned
as a
it, yeah.
JPEG and pulled it right into the computer software.
As
No,
that
no,
picture.
no.
But that might not be what the
Oh, no,
applicant
no,
is
no,
saying.
not that one.
That's not it.
No,
No,
that is
no,
not
no,
it.
no, we're talking about the.
That is not an approved fence.
Photo, yeah.
Okay.
There's no drawing of the 6 that reflects that. So this is what you're saying is the open board on board. Now, just for your own knowledge, because you weren't here, one board is in front, the other board is behind, front and behind. And then there's a gap of, depending on whether it's a 1x6 or a 1x4, it'll either be a 2 3/4 or a 1 3/4 gap. So that might bring up the last issue is the plank size.
Would it be
Let's
appropriate
actually go to
if
that
the
next.
applicant asks a question?
Yes.
To confirm,
Well,
I guess, what
actually-
type of fence the HCC is proposing?
Yes, you can ask that question, but right now we're in voting, so there's not open to deliberations, but this is what we are voting on.
I think it would be appropriate to allow the applicant some dialogue with the commission, to understand exactly what is being
Absolutely.
prescribed to
Sure.
them.
You have the drawing in front of you,
Yep.
and this is the drawing that we spoke of last time, so you're familiar with it. So what questions do you have on the diagram?
So I guess I want to confirm that then this is not the fence, this is not the width of gaps that was worked on and agreed upon with city staff. We are changing the spacings between the fences that was part of our approved plan with staff.
No, last month, we only approved the front picket.
Not with the commission, with city
Discussed
staff.
this.
I think the gap you're talking about, not to exceed 4 inches, that's what you're referring to, right?
No, I'm referring to our application that's being heard at this hearing.
Oh, you're
So
talking
we
about
worked,
you're
we
saying
worked
that-
with the city staff, and the city staff approved a document, and that document is what I'm asking about. So in that document, we discuss the 1-inch gap between the boards due to a slew of reasons which are outlined in the report and our.
Yeah, this fence type that the commission is recommending tonight does not obviously match what the applicant is proposing before you. Staff does support, as I noted before earlier, the proposed fence that the applicant has brought before you tonight. But again, if the commission is directing otherwise, I think from a staff's perspective, we just need a little guidance on how, because we will wrap this into a condition then of approval, so to allow staff some guidance on how we would work with the applicant per your guidelines tonight.
May I ask why the city felt this would be acceptable?
In my opinion, is that it is still an open fence. It allows visibility straight on into the property, and it meets the intent of the guidelines as well as the HCC's deliberation at the last meeting.
Okay, but I can point out to you that the lattice, last time, the top lattice with open board on board, some of us were for that, but you brought out the idea that it's not an approved fence style.
Yeah.
Again, I don't remember that actually that way, but
That's how I understood it.
again, the guidelines are there as guidelines for this district, for your consideration as part of this application. There are the ability for the commission to deviate. I would also personally not read these guidelines as being rope that these 4 pictorial images are the only fence types that are allowed. Again, to me, in my opinion of it, is those pictorial images are there to provide guidance to the HDC of what that particular fence type could potentially look like. I think there's many different types of open board fences.
I understand. Okay, I'm gonna then open up the style once again and let everybody rethink the idea that there are different types. According to Greg, we don't have to follow these 6 types. I believe that we should, but I want to bring that to the table again. Yes, sir.
I have a follow-up question. Now, the last time we asked you to present a mock-up, right? What was your understanding of that? I think we're referring to this.
So,
right?
Yeah. So to answer your question, at the time of the last meeting, the board had suggested a completely custom fence, so something that is not routinely made with gappings that were not routinely made. Upon working with staff and actually working with our contractor to determine pricing and what's the word I'm looking for, and just the reasonability of how reasonable it was to actually construct that, we went with what was a standard fence type, open board fence with a standard gap, because we found that the exorbitant cost of a completely custom fence went way outside of our price ranges and made it cost prohibitive to do. So that's why we talked to them and said, what's an open board fence? This is an open board fence. What's the standard? This is the standard. If we do these different things as we documented with them, prices go up exponentially because standards are that, because they're readily and easily made for them. And so that's why we went with the open board fence as outlined in the guidance, with an open board fence with the gappings that we chose because it's the standard.
I understand.
Would you consider...
Excuse me, Dean, let me interrupt really quickly.
Go ahead.
Would the board really be that opposed to this open board fence instead of
Well, that's what I was going to, that's why I'm
rendering?
opening up the style again.
Because we've gone back and forth. This is similar to Picket, except for it's not sharp at the top.
It's only 7/8 of an inch
Yeah.
down. This one has much larger gap, and because the board on board is offset, you're going to have an even wider view on the diagonal. So it is the most open of the board on board. That's why I thought that was a good compromise.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys, because of the cost issue that you're concerned with, a 3-foot picket would be something that would be less expensive, it would be standard, and would get the commission's approval.
I would just refer back to the security issues we have. A 3-foot picket fence is not a privacy. It doesn't provide any privacy. It doesn't provide any security. And even as documented in all of the images, even the one I'd like to refer back to that has a horse and cart in it, the picket fence that was once on the back of the property is well over 6 feet. So.
Okay. All right, so
pictures and evidence. I mean, we have to have the evidence.
It's
consider that. We're not going to hold that fence.
Yeah. So the evidence is on the first page, and speak up. Oh, sorry. It's the historic photo that's been in all the things, all the documents. It's page 6 of the staff
but look
report.
at the. Okay, yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. I do remember this picture. As a matter of fact, this is exactly the pictorial evidence I was referring to. But look at the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I felt consistently that it should be picket all the way around.
Right.
And I'm even willing to compromise on the height in the back.
Well,
but I believe that is the most
right
appropriate.
now, there's 2 votes for the picket and 3 votes for the
I'm
open
just saying,
board on
just
board.
wanted to make my case.
So,
We're going to reopen it?
that's why it's already been reopened. Does anybody want to deviate from the 6 possibilities? I myself think that is a terrible thing to do because I think that makes us any decision we have at this point in time arbitrary.
Yeah.
That's my own personal opinion.
Well, I think you're right.
I think we
Okay.
should stick with the picket, that we have the pictorial evidence in the record. It's right there.
Okay, well.
That's my point.
When you're
All right.
talking about 6 feet picket in the break.
Well, right now, we all voted on, so the 6 foot is voted on.
That's been voted on, but if you're
We
going to
can change
reopen
the
this.
vote. We can
if you-
reopen it.
Well, if you're going to reopen the style, I would say my personal preference then would be either a 6-foot picket or an open board on board. And
Okay.
staff can work with them to.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And if one of those is exorbitantly costed, staff, of course, could guide them.
all right, but you're saying to do either.
Either.
Give them the
Either's-
option of either.
In case one of them is not a standard.
Okay, all right.
I have a question. When you now picket, you have composite material. Are we going to stick with wood?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of the
we're-
historical
We're
nature of-
required by the historic guidelines
Okay,
to have a
all
wood
right,
fence.
okay, great. Just to make sure that not, because you get either go composite or you go.
Okay, so it looks like we're not going to deviate from one of the 6. So the question now is, do we go with, other than the picket or the board on board, does anybody want to change their vote to something either picket, other than a picket, other than a board on board?
I want to change.
To either not a
Picket, I
picket?
want picket.
No, I'm saying other than a picket or a board
Oh,
on board,
okay.
we're not considering any of the other 4, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So, okay, perfect. So now I'm just going to take the vote again, just for the style. Right now, the 2 options are picket or board on board, so I'll just go through it again. John Roddy?
Either.
Okay. Mary Jo?
Picket.
Rudy?
Picket.
Picket, got it. All right. Kathleen?
Either.
Either, okay, all right. And I continue, I was at Pickett, I'm gonna stay at Pickett. So right now, there are all 5 members will allow Pickett. And 2 of the members will allow either. So do we want to, this is the last question on this style, allow the applicant to do either, or do we want to have Pickett? Right now, Pickett wins.
I feel pretty
I
strongly about
feel
picket.
very comfortable with picket.
Pickett,
Right,
don't
yeah.
give them the
I
option.
think it's a compromise.
Okay. All right, so it's
Yeah.
Pickett, and that wins, essentially is all 5. All right, so then the last thing is the larger fence or some kind of enclosure or visual blocking device to be allowed close to the house. Now, keep in mind that this is a 6-foot fence that we've allowed. So-
Actually, let me interrupt for a second. The suggestion was made by one of the members of the public that there was a blind area near the garage, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be close to the house. It could be anywhere else on the property, but not up to the property line.
And is this even in the application? Are we discussing this for no reason?
Well, John brought it to the table, so
Yeah.
my question is, that there were 3 things that we were going to consider.
Yeah.
Now, this is the 4th. You have the right to say no. So
Maybe what we could do
Is it something you want to
is
consider?
add it as a suggestion as part of the order for city staff to work with them to further help them with plantings, suggestions for privacy, and leave it at that. We don't have to lay it all out, I don't think.
That's fine with me. I just didn't want to exclude it by voting on the
I-
perimeter
yes,
fence.
Yes, understand. I do. But I just don't know if it's appropriate for us to.
Well, was this, and Mary Jo, you asked the question, was this issue even in the original application? I don't believe it was.
No, I don't think so.
All right, so then why don't we table that to another part?
I'm sorry, I missed what you were.
Just the idea of possibly adding something in addition to this fence closer to the house. I'm proposing, let that be a separate hall. Let's not get bogged down by that.
Separate as being in landscaping?
No,
Yeah.
separate as having a separate hall to
If it's
deal with
necessary.
Okay.
another fence
Yeah.
or landscaping or something at a later date.
Yeah.
I don't want to get bogged down with this.
Yeah.
Is that okay by everybody? Sure. Okay,
And-
so we have the 3 things.
Yeah.
It appears that it's going to be the rear yard fence is allowed. The height will be allowed at 6 feet, and it's going to be a picket. Any other thoughts? Yes?
just to cover the commission,
Yes.
I think we should vote on whether we believe this structure is of little historical or design significance, so that we can defend ourselves on leniency.
Mhm.
So can we have a vote on that?
The historic structure itself has little significance?
So per 24-227.2B, in the case of an application for work on a historic resource, the commission shall be lenient in its judgment on plans for structures of little historical or design significance or plans involving new construction.
It's
So
neither
we
of
were
those.
instructed, do we find this is new construction?
You want to advise on that?
Again, Section B is a two-step process, right? So first you have to either decide whether it is a structure of little historical or design significance or a plan involving new construction. Once it falls under those, then you go to the next step. And even though it's one of those two, would it seriously impair the historic or architectural significance of surrounding historic
I'm of that mindset personally. This is historic.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that the 6-foot fence in the backyard will impede the historic nature of it.
Given the parameters that you have
Yes.
in here? Okay.
Yes, that's my position. Let's go through that. I love your suggestion. Vote on it. What is your vote? Do you believe that it is historic structure, but this fence will little impede on it?
I believe that fences deteriorate and they need constant upkeep. And I don't believe that they provide much historical significance to the property. And I believe this is considered new construction. And so I believe that we are entitled to be lenient in our decisions.
You're saying that the fence itself is new construction.
Correct.
I thought we were talking about the building, the
Either-
historic building.
Either or. So first you have to determine whether the fence plan is a structure defined under 24-1 as including fences, right? So whether the fence is of little historical or design significance in of itself, or if the fence involves new construction. It would be my interpretation that new construction refers to the construction of a building and not necessarily fences or other fixtures. I believe that structure covers fences because it's defined, structure is defined under 24-1 as including fences.
Unclear. I understand the fence is a structure, but then why wouldn't it be considered a new structure if it's a new fence?
I feel like the intent of the statute, if you were to interpret it that anything that you build, anything that's new on any historic resource that you're building or putting up, then by that statute, by the language, you would have to be lenient on almost all things, all plans.
So can you give us guidance as to which factors we need to vote on in succession?
What do you mean, which factors?
So it's or, the word, the
Right, so
operative word is or.
first step you need to vote on is whether the fence is a structure of little historical or design significance, or if it's a plan involving new construction. Either one of those.
So the fence itself is of little historic significance, not the house, the fence.
Correct.
So that's that one.
And if it is, then you go to step number 2, and you decide whether that structure of little historical significance would seriously impair the historic or architectural significance of the historic resource.
Okay, I'm ready to go through the vote for
Ready?
everybody. All right, so the fourth item is, we're gonna, it's a two-part question. Is this new fence of little historical significance?
Yes.
And if we say it is, then we have determined whether it will impair the existing historical building. Okay, so Commissioner Roddy, you're up first.
It is not.
It is not. It is the fence of little historical significance. Are you saying yes?
I'm saying it is not of historical significance.
Okay, fence is little historical significance. That's a yes then.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Am I reading it right? Right. All right, Commissioner Franz, is the fence little historical significance?
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Yes.
Commissioner Ventola says, of course. All right, next then is Part B. Since it is little historical significance, will this fence impair the existing historical house? Commissioner
Historical resource as a whole, so those, all the buildings.
Resource as a whole.
Yeah.
Thank you, by the way. Commissioner Roddy?
No, it will not.
Okay. Commissioner Franz?
No.
Commissioner Morgan?
Nope.
Commissioner Ramirez?
No.
Commissioner Vensola says, what the heck, of course not. So there we go. So that takes care of all that. So now, I need a motion to accept the decisions that we made on the rear yard fence being allowed, the 6-foot height being allowed, the pickets being required, and that it does not, it is new construction without harming the existing.
Again, I think we need to wrap the picket fence in the rear yard into some type of condition to work with staff on that before we can issue the historic area work permit. But I will note the design guidelines do not allow a picket fence in the rear yard. So again, the commission does have the authority to deviate, but I just want to confirm, is the commission deviating from the guidelines?
Yeah. Because remember, there's
You're
not
saying-
really a rear yard.
You're saying
because,
it-
you know,
It's on page 9 of the staff
I'm
analysis,
reading, yeah.
the second bullet above the images.
All right, fence should be appropriate for the architectural style and scale of the house, period. Fences should be simple wooden pickets or wrought iron of simple design if visible from the street, or rear yards only, post and wire, board abutting board, open 3-rail fence or open board and board. I'm reading that as not allowing the post and wire, board abutting board, 3-rail fence or open board on board in the front. That's why I'm reading that.
Correct. The fence before you tonight is a rear yard fence.
And I'm saying that the way I'm reading this is those are prevented from being on the front.
That's how I read it too.
Yeah, I'm not, and I'm saying that it's not saying the pickets can't be on the back.
That's fine. I just want to confirm, because again, the commission does have the ability, obviously, to deviate as well, again, just for staff's perspective and understanding, so we can work with the applicant.
Right, and I'm saying that, I understand that, thank you, but I'm of the mindset that we're not deviating from what this is saying we can do.
Okay.
Okay, so, anybody have any concerns on this picket fence in the backyard?
I think we did great.
Okay, so we need a motion?
Again, if we could put a condition to that, to work with staff on the revising of the historic area work permit, to require it to be a rear yard fence of a picket design up to a maximum of 6 feet. It does deviate from the application that's in front of you tonight from the applicant. So before we
Okay.
can certify the plans and issue the historic area work permit, we do need to work with the applicant to revise those plans.
Okay, but can we not also say that on page 26, the wooden pickets is the design that we want?
You can, but we need it wrapped into a condition of approval to allow, otherwise you're going to be approving tonight what they're proposing. They need to work with staff to revise the plans to match the Historic District Commission's guidance tonight of a 6-foot
okay.
tall maximum picket fence
I see what you're saying.
prior to
So
the
add
issuance
that
of any
in.
permits.
Okay, all right, so whoever makes that motion, say that verbiage will be added. So I'm looking for a brave soul, but by the way, we only have one.
You could
So
just
do-
say as noted, I think.
Right, but so does anybody want to put a motion together?
Everybody ready? I'll do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's always her, she's the strongest.
Okay,
Everybody else
so
is afraid.
I move that Historic District Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the applicant's testimony, and the staff report findings and recommendation, grant HIST-9246-2022 installation of a rear yard fence, finding it to be in compliance with 24-227.2 of the city code, with one condition that the applicants work with staff on what the Historic District Commission approved tonight in the way of design.
I want
Is
to add
that
one
right?
caveat to it. It appears to me that the wooden pickets And there's two choices, but I'm saying go with the simpler one. Are you guys all okay with going with the simpler of the two?
Yes.
Proportion appears to me to be if the slat is a one unit width, it appears that the gap is 3/4 width. Do you guys agree to that?
Yes.
Yep. 3/4, yeah.
All right, so we're all voting on that. Say aye.
Aye.
All right, that's part of the condition then.
Okay.
Okay?
And do you need, Greg, do you need us to say anything further?
I think we're good. I think I can go back in the video and make sure I got the correct
Perhaps
dimension.
we should add to the condition that the open board fence and the board-abutting-board fence is denied.
Thank you. Yes, we will add that the open board fence and the board fence is denied. May I have a second? Great.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor, go through the list. Commissioner Roddy.
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Aye.
Commissioner Ventola says aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for your
Thank you for your
patience.
patience. Thank you all.
All right, next then. We have tax credit applications.
Yeah.
Should we give her a hard time?
Oh, that's right. Yes, you have to, because you're.
Just to be clear, I mean, what did you approve, a picket fence with 3/4 of an inch between the pipe?
No, sorry. If the picket fence is a unit of 1, the gap will be a unit of 3/4. So if the picket fence is 4-inch slat, the gap is 3 inches.
That's the ratio.
Yeah. On the
Ratio,
floor.
yes, sir.
All right, thanks, it's hard.
I'm glad you asked, because.
We're happy to answer
Yeah,
questions.
thank you so much, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Okay, so next we have HIST 9181-2022, which is a historic tax credit certification at 31 Walker. It's in the R90 medium density residential zone, and it is contributing to the Brooks, Russell, and Walker Historic District. The applicant seeks $3,330 in historic tax credits for roofing work. The work did not require a historic area work permit because it was in-kind replacement. And I'll go through photos of the project from the staff report. The first is the aerial of the property. So the roofing work took place on the porch roof, which is this green roof that you see. It wraps around here. And then also the dormers received repair work. And here's a photo of the front of the house. You can see the porch and then one of the dormers. That's along Russell or Walker Avenue. And then here's some of the representative photos of the work. So this is a before photo that shows how bad the metal roof was before it was repaired. And then here's a in progress to show you after the metal roof was removed, we had rot and the boards needed to be replaced. And this is looking down Russell Avenue towards Walker Avenue. And then you see in the bottom photo here the boards that were replaced. And then the new metal roofing was installed. And here's a view of the completed roof on the side elevation. And then also I mentioned that there was rot at the dormers. So those boards were removed. And I'm sorry, I can quickly go through that. So we started with photo of the house. This is the original metal roofing that was removed. And we see the rot to the boards, more rot, and then the replacement work. Then we have the new metal roofing that was added, and here's the completed work here. And then the dormers as well, we had rot on the wood here, and here's another dormer that had rot, and here's another dormer, and there was insulation added underneath, and then new siding was added. So, if you have any questions, the applicant, Kathleen Ramirez, is here. If you can please come to the podium, state your name, and anything else you would like to add.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Kathleen Ramirez at your service.
Okay. Let's just go round robin because these are tax credits and they're not complicated. So first let me ask, is there anyone from the, anyone from the public who wants to speak on behalf of or against this tax application?
There's not.
I see no one in the audience. So I guess that's a conclusion. Is there anybody waiting online to speak?
Let me double check that. Just a moment.
Take your time.
And I see no one.
Okay, very good. All right, so then let's hear from the commissioners. Commissioner Roddy.
I believe everything that's described is absolutely necessary to maintain the integrity of the house. It should be approved.
Wonderful, thank you. Commissioner LaFrance.
No, absolutely. I think we should certify it.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah, I think the owner had done a fantastic job and deserved a tax credit.
And I have to ask Commissioner Ramirez if she's abstaining.
Abstaining, of course.
And Commissioner Valenzola says, absolutely. A wonderful building. It's beautiful, and the before and after, there's no question what was needed and what was done is great. So congratulations. It passes 4-0 to 1. There's always one. There's always one. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
All right, next then is, let's see here. Let us, did we second it? I want to do it officially.
I don't think we have to,
Second.
do we?
We don't, it's a vote, so we have to second.
Okay.
So it was seconded.
Second.
Does anybody want to change their vote? The answer is no, so it stands, 4-0 to 1. Okay, next then is HIST, it's another tax credit, we have 3 of them tonight. HIST 9245-2022, historic tax credit certification at 114 Meem Avenue in the R90 medium density residential zone. May we have introduction from staff, please?
Yes, the property is contributing to the Chestnut Meem Historic District. The applicant seeks $454.51 in credits to replace the work. The work did not require a historic area work permit because it was in-kind replacement. And again, I'll show some before photos. So this is the roof as it looked 6 years ago. And here's another view on the bottom that shows the previous roof. And here's how it looked after. So the homeowner actually works in the construction business and they were able to do it themselves. So no labor is involved, no labor fees are involved in this project. It's just the materials for the roof. Any other questions?
No. All right, and again, it's tax credit, so I'm gonna call your name. I guess what we can do is, not when I call your name, jump in anybody if you have anything to say before we go to a vote. No? Yeah, okay, it's pretty simple. All right, so let us have a motion to approve or deny this tax credit certification.
I would move that it be approved.
You have a
It's
second?
eligible.
I second.
Okay, all right. So all in favor of passing, aye if you support the motion, nay if you don't, abstain if you wish. Commissioner Roddy?
Aye.
Commissioner LaFrance?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Commissioner Ramirez?
Aye.
Commissioner Ventola says aye, so that's 5-0, motion passes. Next is the third tax credit, which is HIST 9251-2022, a historic tax credit certification at 102 Chestnut Street in the R90 medium density residential zone. May we have an introduction from staff, please?
Yes, the property is contributing to the Chestnut Meem Historic District. The applicant seeks $1,625.97 in credits to rebuild the front porch. The HDC approved the work with HIST 8787-2021. And now I'll go through photos of the project from the staff report. So if you remember, this came before you. This was the porch before. It had some issues. It was sinking into the ground, and these columns that were holding up the porch were failing. And here's a close-up view. This is the stacks of concrete blocks that were used to support the edge of the porch, and underneath here you can see more blocks that were holding it up close to the house. So the applicant received approval from the commission to improve the porch and extend it slightly out, and this is the after. So it bumped out slightly. The shape of the bump out matches the shape of the house right here, the bay, and balustrade was added all along to match balustrade elsewhere on the house, and of course it was shored up with these brick pillars to support the extended porch. Here's a different view. As part of this project, the applicant restored, did a replacement of the original wood ceiling, which they found underneath when they started doing demolition work. They found it underneath. It was too rotted to save, so they matched the profile exactly. So they went to great lengths to try to restore it, and they went into detail about this. Here's the boards that they found. So they took it to a planing mill to have these boards, the profile matched exactly. So, any other questions related to this project?
No, I don't have any.
This is the kind of application you like to see.
Yes.
Yeah. Really attention to detail. Great.
What kind of flooring material was used?
I believe they got approval for synthetic wood flooring, which was approved by the Historic District Commission. So I do recall that the stair treads and the flooring is a composite material, which was approved by the commission.
And I think they were warned that that stuff gets hot in the sun. I don't know who warned them, but I do know that they were warned.
And I don't know if I was supposed to, but it's just a tax credit, but disclosing this is my neighbor also.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
And we live in the same historic
All right.
district.
Any other thoughts before we go to a vote? Before we go to vote, is there anybody who is from the public who wants to speak?
Let me double check that again. And seeing no one?
Wonderful. Okay, so aye, nay, or abstain? Commissioner Roddy.
Aye, I truly appreciate the bead board that they
Isn't that
used.
great?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Commissioner LaFrance.
Aye.
Commissioner Morty.
I appreciate a lot of work you put into this.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Aye, it's beautiful.
And Commissioner Van Sola says, I agree with all you guys. Aye. Very good, so that passes 5-0, and that's the end of the work at hand. So next is from anything from staff.
The only thing I have is to remind you that the annual training, it will be on May 10th, the evening, 7 p.m. It'll be on Zoom, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
Got it. 7 p.m., not 7:30.
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
I gotta double check that.
About how long will it run?
I've been told to expect an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay, very good, very good. Will you kindly send us a reminder?
I will send you a reminder and the Zoom meeting link as the date grows closer. of
Wonderful,
course.
wonderful, all right.
And an invitation.
And an invitation.
Greg, do you have anything?
Nothing from me tonight, but thank you.
Eric?
No, nothing further.
All right. Anything from the commission? John?
No.
Mary Jo?
Do we have any updates on the National Historic designation for?
Yeah. The city has hired a contractor or hired a historian to study areas of the city history which have not been researched before, particularly history of minority groups that has not been, well researched.
That'd be great.
We had a meeting with him. This is a grant through our community museum, our Parks Recreation Department. Had a meeting with him a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him personally if he could look into the history of the enslaved people that were at Summit Hall Farm. We have a lot of good research on the Civil War history and the early history of the property, but we don't know anything about the people who were enslaved on the property. And so he is going to look into that. So we hope his research he finds good research that we can add to our National Register nomination. So he's getting started right now. His name is Tony Cohen. He is based in the farm, I can't remember the name, in Germantown, the public museum, Buttonwood Farm, I believe. But yeah, he's the historian who's been contracted by the city.
Wonderful.
If I recall, a few years back, there was an anniversary of the releasing of Gaithersburg, because the South, the Confederacy, held it for ransom.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, I would think that the Gaithersburg was a northern-leaning community. Were they part of the Union? or were they part of the Confederacy? I thought based on the Confederacy holding for ransom would be a union.
Yeah, the Commissioner LaFrance, I'm sure, can give us a
Go ahead,
lesson
tell
here.
us.
Were you alive back then?
I was not.
Oh, should I hit him?
But my understanding is that in their pillaging and collecting supplies, robbing and so forth, they, go to this Summit Hall Farm Park. And the ladies took their belongings and hid them in their big skirts. And so they ate, they drank, they were merry, and they missed the Monocacy River battle. And so the Union won.
Oh, because of
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Oh, I never
Oh,
heard
yeah.
that. I never heard
That's
that.
a great story.
Now, the reason that Monocacy battle was so important is that it, I think it was Jubal Early, they essentially stopped him from moving to Gettysburg.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
But-
that was
but
one of the
Maryland is
reasons
complicated.
the North won Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Because they were.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
wow.
way cool.
That is.
But Maryland was complicated and had a little bit of sympathizers on both sides.
Yeah, Maryland
Although we were kind of considered Sweden. We were in the middle.
Well, I know
So-
Frederick was Union, but Baltimore was Confederate, which I thought was kind of interesting to me. I would say odd, is because I thought that Baltimore being near a water mass would have
port.
Yeah, the port would
Yeah,
make them have
exactly.
international, and even along the coast, dealing with New York.
New York, yeah.
And so I would have always thought, when I heard it was Southern, I always thought that was unusual because of the idea of their communication with New York would be so strong. That's where the goods that come into port get created as textiles and then shipped elsewhere. Well, anyway, that's why I was wondering about Gaithersburg, because I know Frederick was Union, and was it something Fritchie? Barbara Fritchie was very famous landowner up in Frederick, leaning out of her house screaming at the Confederates to go away. Because they threatened to burn down Frederick apparently as well.
They did a lot of
So
work.
she was like the bravest soul of all, screaming at them, waving the Union flag at them.
Did that have to do with the fence?
Yeah.
All right, very good. So did I hit everybody?
Well, now that
Oh,
we're on
that's
the
right, I did.
commission,
We
right?
were on you, so
Just
go ahead.
really quickly. If it's possible, could you please bring up the Martha Meem house picture was used earlier for evidence? Thank you. So, Montgomery, are we going to be out there? It is. Montgomery Preservation is nominating 104 Chestnut Street for an award for the stripping off of the aluminum siding and restoring and replacing the original siding underneath.
Wow.
And do we have a picture of what it looks like now, don't we?
Do.
Yeah.
Because they had an application before us earlier today.
Yes, they did. So you remember when we approved it?
Beautiful.
Now, this
That
is
color
what it looks
scheme
like
is so
now.
great. That's just so elegant and also historic, like they would have just selected those colors back then.
Yeah.
Really nice job.
So I just thought everybody could get excited. Sometimes doing what we do isn't always satisfying, and this is a win, folks. So,
Well,
it's good.
we always used to have our own awards.
Yeah.
And the reason why we didn't the last couple of years is because of the pandemic. But
Yeah.
can we possibly have an awards this year?
Well, we could award
Yeah.
two
Is it too
as well.
late?
Notice
We
is a
usually
bit
have
short
more.
this year, but certainly going forward in the future,
Okay.
there's there's a few properties that
Is
I'm
it
sure
May that we usually do?
traditionally May.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this year May would be difficult.
Okay. We don't wanna push.
But yeah, definitely in the future, keep that in mind. There's a
Okay.
few other properties similar to this in the
Good.
city, including the Crown Farm property that
Yes.
have been
Yes,
restored within the past
absolutely.
couple of years since we
Yeah.
last
Yes.
gave out awards in
Yes.
2019.
Yeah.
So.
That's true. Good. Okay. All right. Anything further from you?
Nope, that
Okay.
was just
Rudy,
the
you're next.
good
Nothing?
stuff.
Kathleen.
No, but what a pleasure to meet all of you and to work with you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure working with you as well.
I, for one, think you hit it out of the park tonight. Very impressive, your research and your background, really great addition to our group here. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for your participation.
And thank you for saving one of our Gaithersburg gems by living
That's
there.
true.
Wow.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true, because if you didn't buy it, it would have to have gone to the Dozer again. Remember it was this close to a wrecking ball.
Oh, yes.
Literally, it came in
It
at the
had been
last
condemned,
minute.
yeah.
And that water, that's just insipid. So the roof and the dormers, I could just feel the water creeping in. Oh, no.
I think we should raise your taxes.
Yeah,
Huh?
scary.
I think we should raise your taxes.
That's a bad word.
That's true. They should change they should add another letter and make it a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
That's a rough one. Okay, so nothing further?
We're good.
We're hereby adjourned.